Hi and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the arse of the subscription button as well. And don't forget to share the video far and wide. This will help with YouTube's algorithm and will help promote the channel more. If you would like to support the channel and help make it grow, any and all donations can be made to paypal.me/cryptidsroost and would be most gratefully received. If you enjoy listening to the following story, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. I'm sure they would appreciate it. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description, and don't forget to check out the merch store. The link will be in the description and also in the video thumbnail. If you would like an honourable mention, send in a snapshot of yourself with your purchase and I'll feature it in one of the videos. If you're going to leave a dislike, please leave a comment as to why. That way I can see what you didn't like about the video and I can possibly make changes in future videos. Thank you. And finally, have you written a creepypasta story that you would like me to narrate? Or have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters? You can submit your stories, encounters and also your photos to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. And if you wish to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. All links are listed below. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. I hunt cryptids for a living. It's harder than you think. Part 1. This fantastic series is written by Nomad65555, a wonderful author over on Reddit's Nosleep subreddit. You may be thinking that the movies make it look easy. Oh well, all you have to do is put a bullet of silver in its skull. That's not too hard, right? Wrong. A cryptid is at least 6 times smarter than any human. If I could kill humans instead, I'd complete twice as many jobs. There's more risks involved than people take into account. You fail, and you and dozens of others die. You succeed, and you get your $60 per cryptid. I started this thread to document my experiences in my field. I don't know how long I will carry it on. Depends on how many people listen. It's kinda just gonna be like a public journal. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm Kyle, and I kill the things that go bump in the night. Night 1. At 6 p.m, I get into my midnight black 2010 Ford F350, the cast iron spiked bumper guard glistening in the evening sun. She's my pride and joy. Her name is Stacy. She keeps me company on my trips, that and my 101.5. I begin my patrol, waiting for the call from my boss, Jerry, a 6'9" redhead who's more jacked than Mike Tyson on steroids, about my night's assignment. I get my call around 8:30. Jerry's deep, gravelly voice relays the information that I'm on the hunt for a staggeron. Basically a big buck that is 6 feet tall. If that deer had the organic equivalent of cast iron for fur and horns, sharper than that of a butcher's knife. Also said deer is not afraid of humans and will not hesitate to gore them to death. Add carnivorous on top of that and you have a staggeron. I personally like to call them stegs. All in all, fairly simple hunt to open this log. I went to the area of the sightings / gorings and parked Stacy. I opened the back door of my truck, grabbed my AR-10, chambered in .308, all in all ineffectual due to the fact that they were lead bullets, and my .500 Magnum revolver. I put one very expensive bullet that vibrated between my fingers in the cylinder, a silver bullet. I put the revolver in my holster and started the search for the gory site. According to Jerry, a young couple was walking on the side of the road when a huge white mass came charging out and collided with the male. He was killed on impact. The female ran and called the police, bailing about the loss of her boyfriend. They referred her to Jerry, who contacted me. She then witnessed the stag spear her boyfriend's corpse and walk into the woods with it impaled on its horns. I found bloodstains on the road and I followed them into the woods. After about half hour of trailing, it was getting dark. I switched on the light at the end of my gun. By the light from my tack light, I found the sickening sight. There was no open casket funeral for this man. There wasn't much left of him. The stag had ripped his stomach open, leaving his entrails trailing everywhere. His chest was nothing but lungs and ribs. Stags think of hearts as a delectable morsel. The stag was now working on eating the man's face. I needed a clean shot to the head with my revolver to kill it. The only thing I was going to do with the rifle would be to piss it off. Plus, even if I managed to penetrate its skin, cryptids have enhanced regeneration. In a matter of minutes it would be fully healed. However, bronze burns cryptids. It had not yet noticed me. I switched off my tack light and waited for my eyes to adjust. I pulled the roll of bronze wire I always kept on me out of my pocket and unrolled some. With the silence of a trained killer, which I am, but that's a story for another time, that's when I thought of something. I'm a big guy, 6'5" and about 200 pounds of pure muscle, but I couldn't possibly keep this under control until it tired enough to shoot it, unless it was in severe pain beforehand. The stag's genitals were openly exposed. I took my chance and brought my steel-toed Ariat boots into its nuts as hard as I could. The stag brayed in pain as its baby-making sack was hit with enough pressure to smash a cylinder block. I jumped on his back and wrapped the wire around the stag's neck and pulled. I heard the sizzle of its skin burning and it started to buck. The only thing I could think was, shit, fuck. God damn, how did it recover so fast? I hung on for dear life, as I knew if I was bucked, those horns were going to stab me right through the lungs. Then I got another idea that was probably dumber than the first. I grabbed his horns and jumped. It was getting more pissed off by the minute, and even more so that it had resistance on its horns. I got traction and held my footing. I twisted its head and the stag dropped, flopping like a fish out of water. See, when their head is twisted, the stag loses all its power to its muscles. I placed my foot on its neck, pulled out the revolver, took aim at his head and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out and the stag stopped thrashing. I called Jerry and told him that the job was done. He sent a clean-up crew to take care of the bodies, both human and stag. I waited on Stacy's tailgates until they got there. I exchanged words with Jerry, who accompanied them. The money was wired to my account. I put my equipment back in my truck and drove off, only slightly more sore than when I started. I got home, locked my truck, went inside, and here I am, typing a journal of my tale in the night on Reddit. That's all I have time for now. Part 2 will be out soon. This is Carl Reitinger, signing off. Part 2. So, after my first journal entry received so much support, I decided to continue this. Tonight I had an extremely difficult and, well, it was painful. Currently, my ass feels like I dropped the soap in prison. My arm is wrapped in hospital gauze due to the bite I received, and I'm more purple than Thanos. I'm Carl Reitinger, and I get the shit beat out of me by hairless dogs, apparently. Night 2. I got into my truck and completely dreading tonight's hunt. I had dealt with Native American creatures before, and fuck, they hurt. I, however, had never dealt with this specific creature. Jerry called me around 5. "Yo!" I said as I picked up the phone. "Kyle, your assignment is a keylot. It's been terrorizing the cars driving on 522. "What the fuck is a keylute?" "Hang on, let me pull up the file." A few clicks later, a beast of Native American origin, known to fry the brain of any human that looks in its eyes, confusing it long enough to strike. It has an appearance like that of a hairless coyote, save for the fur on its feet, which helps it to move silently. Sounds like something straight from hell. He hung up the phone a second after that, and now I was on my way, through the state of West Virginia, to a little known town in the middle of nowhere known as Berkeley Springs. Think the smallest hick town you know, and shrink it by a factor of 4. That's Berkeley Springs. I arrived in town and went to a small gas station, asking about anyone seeing a hairless coyote. Apparently, a car rolled through about an hour before. The tyre popped, scratches down the side, and a smashed window. I asked to see the car as it had been left there. The 2019 Dodge Challenger looked like it had been hit by a steamroller with claws. The windshield was smashed. There were 2-inch deep claws marks running down the side, shredding the metal and chipping the black paint. The tyre looked like it had been run through with a sickle bar mower, and the car's roof had been ripped off, turning it into a convertible, redneck style. Whatever this key loop was, it was a bad motherfucker, and I wasn't sure I wanted to fight it. I asked the owner of the store where the car owner had his encounter, if you can call it that. He told me it was about a mile outside of town. I opened up the back of my truck and started loading my guns. I put magazine bronze rounds into my AR and 1 silver bullet into my revolver. This round was different from what I normally used. If the beast is Native American, you have to use a special round. The bullets are silver hollow points with holy ash in the tip and blessed by a Native American shaman. I got in the truck and started driving down 522. After about 5 minutes, I heard a growl that rattled the frame of my truck and saw golden eyes in the woods alongside the road. Next thing I knew, my truck was rattling with each revolution of my tyres. I stopped the truck and got out. I looked at my passenger side tyre and saw a hairless coyote clamped onto my steel reinforced tyre. It snarled and released the tyre when it saw me. This thing was 5 foot tall, with wrinkled pink skin and midnight black fur around its feet. It bared its huge sharp teeth at me as I started to back up, and it followed. I aimed my AR at its eyes and fired. It yelled in pain as my bullet hit it in the eye, leaving a sizzling hole. See, cryptids couldn't regenerate completely new body parts, such as eyes, so it would be blind in that eye forever. It started to run at me, and I kicked her in the head. It went sprawling with another yelp. However, it was back up in a half a second and running at me. I'm not proud of it, but I panicked. I started to run away like a pussy when this thing jumped on me and bit me in the ass. I flipped over and trapped it beneath me, but it scratched the shit out of my back trying to get up. I got up and I ran to put distance between us. It was back up in a second and running at me. It caught up and latched onto my arm. I screamed in pain, which only made it bite harder. I took my Bowie knife, the size of a small crusader sword, and stabbed it in the side. It yelped again and let go, but it regenerated around my knife, so I wouldn't be able to get it back out. Before I knew what was happening, the keylute jumped on me. I held it back as best as I could because it was trying to snap my throat. I knew if it got my throat, I was gone. I started frantically punching it in the face, neck and body. Eventually I kicked it off and ran to Stacy, my truck, read previous story for context, and jumped in. I started her up and drove her full speed into the keylute, impaling it on the cast iron spikes welded to the bumper guard. It thrashed and screamed and sprayed blood across the front of my truck and the ground. I pulled out my revolver, doing my best to minimize use of my left arm, and aimed at the keylute's head and fired. It died immediately. I got back in my truck, slumped into the driver's seat and called Jerry. telling him that the Keeloot was dead. While I was waiting for the clean-up crew, I did my best to staunch the bleeding in my arm to no result. The Keeloot had severed an artery. I ripped off my shirt sleeve and wrapped it round tightly around the bite. That would have to do until I got to the hospital. Jerry got there with the crew. They took the body, wired $750 to my account, damn well deserved after the shit that thing put me through, and I drove to the hospital. I told the doctor in the hospital that I got attacked by a rabid dog, which wasn't entirely untrue. I went home, and here I am writing the post. I'm going to take 2 days off to let my wounds heal. I'll be back after that time. Don't play with Keeloots, kids. This is Carl Reitinger, signing off. Part 3. So, since we last spoke, I've stabbed a fish woman in the face, fallen asleep against my will, and gotten the shit beat out of me by an old cursed Indian lady. Night 3. Jerry called me with my assignment for the night. A naiad and jobbins. Now I know how to deal with jobbins, but had never had to do so. Basically, they're like big fireflies. They glow red and create a melodic song by moving their wings. This song can put a human to sleep, or if they're already asleep, keep them from waking. From what I can tell, they're fairly peaceful. The way to get rid of them is to make their presence seem unwanted. I just didn't know how to do this. A naiad is a water nymph that lured people into the water with their beauty and then drowned them. I dealt with them first. The house was about half hour outside of Berkeley Springs. That place like attracts cryptids. On the way there, I realised that I haven't really told you guys much about myself. So let me introduce myself. My name is Carl Rattinger. I'm 6'5", 200 pound of pure muscle. I have jet black hair, a standard army crew cut, and an unkempt lumberjack beard. My typical attire includes bootcut jeans, a plain type black t-shirt, my steel-toed Ariat boots, and a camo baseball cap. I grew up in rural West Virginia, between Berkeley Springs and Martinsburg. My dad was a raging alcoholic who took his anger out on me. My mother was a submissive and didn't stand up to my father. My little sister Becca is the nicest person you'll ever meet. I killed my father when I was 17. I came home from work one night to hear her screaming. My mom was at work as well. I ran up the stairs and burst into her room to see my dad on top of her, removing her clothes. His were already off. I kept a gun since I worked at a gun shop and used it in defense. I grabbed him, threw him on the floor, and didn't hesitate to shoot him in the dick. As he lay on the floor screaming, I got Becca out. I grabbed him again and slammed him against the window over and over until it shattered. I shoved him out and watched him tumble off the porch roof onto the ground. I ran down the stairs outside to see him trying to get up. I shot him. Then again, and again, and again, and again, until my gun was out of ammo. He was dead by the third of 7th shots. I buried him in the backyard. My mother came home and I told her what happened. No one ever suspected his disappearance related to his death. They all thought he ran off with another woman. After I graduated high school, I used my psychology degree in an unusual way. I started a business as a contract killer. Something snapped in me the day I killed my father. Some piece of my sanity snapped. Not only now was I willing to kill, but well, I looked forward to it. I enjoyed killing. But don't mistake me as a serial killer. Oh no. I only kill for cash. I killed multiple politicians in other countries along with George Tiller, who was a late-term abortionist in our own town. You may be wondering why I'm willing to confess to these crimes that I would be executed for. Well, for one, I'm no longer afraid of death. I no longer really feel fear. I feel pain and defeat, yes, but not fear. Number 2, the entire world thinks I'm dead, shot in a hit gone wrong. Well, I was shot, but I recovered just fine. The body they found that had my photoless ID was in fact planted on a Mr. George Mason, my accomplice, who, when I was shot in the back of the head and pitched his body over the side of the building before fleeing the scene. That's when Jerry found me. I was hiding out at my late grandmother's house when I heard a knock at the door. It was just getting hot with a girl I brought home from the local bar, so obviously this knock on the door at 1 a.m. pissed me off a bit. I didn't bother putting my pants back on before I walked to the door, leaving a very noticeable bulge in my boxers. I opened the door to see a 6'9" redhead with a lumberjack beard and biceps bigger than the bottle of Jack in my hands. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. "Name's Jerry. I understand you're a hitman on the run." At this statement, I knew he was going to try and get money from me or threaten to tell, so I smashed the bottle of Jack Daniels on his head, swung up onto his neck and put him in a chokehold. He promptly plucked me off his back with one hand and hurled me through my drywall. "I hope that's not the tactic you use when I hire you." I didn't like that. He didn't say if in his statement. It was like he was implying that I was going to work with him or else. "What do you mean, hire me?" "I mean that from now on, you're going to be hunting monsters." He flicked a business card in my face and walked towards the door. The card said, "Crypt Monster Extermination Services, Jerry Wilkes, 304 XXX XXXX. Hold the fucking phone, Jim, or Jerry, or Jerkoff, or whatever the fuck your name is. What if I don't want to hunt monsters since they don't fucking exist?" "You want proof of their existence? Here." He disappeared for a moment and came back with a fucking 6-foot tall wolf. It leapt on me and started to drag me out the door by my shirt. After my screaming, Jerry then said, "Rogmeyer, that's enough." "What the fuck is that thing?" "That would be a fern wolf. And as to your question, if you don't want to, then you die. Simple as that." "How much?" $60 minimum. Goes up depending on the cryptid." "Fine, I'll attend training." "Great. See you there." After this, me and my date finished what we were doing 3 times over, and I sent her home the next morning. And now here I am. After a week of training, I'm now a cryptid hunter of 2 months. I arrived at the property with a naiad problem. The property was big, probably about 100 acres based on what Stacy's GPS said. I turned off the song I was listening to, Indestructible by Disturbed, and got out of the truck. The owner of the property walked up to me. "Pond's over there," he said in a gruff voice. He was middle-aged, balding, and had a beer belly. He was fairly short with a no-nonsense face. I grabbed a silver spear out of my truck after thanking the man and watching him walk back inside. I walked over to the pond and looked in. I couldn't see anything at first. Then I noticed the face. It was the same as a human's, but it was green. I held up the spear and spoke in a commanding voice. "Come out of the pond now, or I swear I'll stab you in the head." She looked at me and didn't move, as if calling my bluff. I wasn't bluffing. A second later, she was wailing in an ear-splitting tone and writhing under the water. A few more seconds and she was floating dead. She literally just looked like a human with a fishtail. I called Jerry and left the property. On to the call about jobbins. I arrived on the spot on 522, near to where I killed the Keeloot at around 10 p.m. I immediately saw their red glow and heard their melodic song. To make them feel unwanted, I grabbed my revolver and shot in their general direction. They flew off and I got back into Stacy. I started to head home when I saw something that definitely wasn't human run in front of my truck. I got out my revolver with one of my nat rounds, the ones I used in the key loop case, and I got out. I began to search. After a while of walking down the road, I found out a little old lady hunched over in the middle of the highway. I knew exactly what this was when I saw the wood skin on her back. Skinwalker. Fuck. She turned round, and as soon as I met her eyes, I passed out. I woke up a few seconds later with her on top of me, now a wolf-like creature, only it was so distorted that it looked more like a demon. I moved extremely quickly when I suddenly grew all weight behind my foot, which connected with its abdomen and sent it flying. I ran up to it and kicked her in the face, only it caught my shoe and dragged me off my feet. It turned back to human, and this bitch kicked me in the face. She then punched me in the dick. "Fuck you, bitch," I said. "Make wise your words, son," she said in a voice far too deep for a little old lady. "Fuck off." She kicked me in the mouth. I started to stand up. She grabbed the knife on my belt, cut me across the abdomen and knocked me down, and held the knife against my throat. I was dead. I knew it. She knew it. But for some reason I survived. She got up, put my knife back into my belt, punched me in the throat to keep me down, and ran off into the woods yelling, "Next time I won't be so merciful." After I recovered my composure, I got up. I tried to track her, but it was useless. There were no tracks in the mud, no bloodstains, nothing. I checked the cut on my chest. It was deep, but I wouldn't need stitches. I called Jerry and told him what happened and that there was a skinwalker at large. He responded with a, "Kyle, you're a fucking idiot." And I went home to lick my wounds. Now here I am, telling you guys about my experience. Let me know if you see a skinwalker in the Berkeley Springs area. Do not approach her. She may not show you mercy. This is Kyle Reitinger, signing off. Part 4. So, my call was a little different tonight. First of all, Jerry said that I now had a partner. His name is Javier. He can explain his backstory. He'll be there in 10 minutes. Hang on, Jerry. You know I work alone. I don't do partners.
You do now.
Fuck. Fine. What's my assignment?
You have 2 again tonight. First, there's a herd of Wendigo hunting tourists around the Winchester, Virginia area. Second, well, this is an unusual one.
Jerry chuckled.
A sex robot went rampant. It's killed its owner by strangling it between its legs during a 69 maneuver. It was last spotted around the Sharpsburg area in Maryland.
Jerry, you realise I work in cryptid interventions, not killing sex workers, right?
Hey, whatever it takes to make money, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Wait for Javier, then set out.
Copy that. Javier arrived about 5 minutes later. A 2019 Dodge Ram 3500 turbo diesel painted cherry red rolled into my driveway. Rich boy. This guy clearly had no idea what he needed to hunt cryptids. The truck was fully stocked. No reinforced windows, no cast iron bumped, no iron laced tyres, nothing. That truck was like a soda can to any cryptid. A Mexican man in his early 20s stepped out of the truck. He was about 6 foot even, probably 170 pounds, with a mullet, a thick moustache, and a Glock 17 on his hip. He was wearing a pair of black jeans, a white t-shirt, and a pair of Carolina boots. He had a pair of Oakley sunglasses covering his eyes. "You must be Kyle," he said while approaching me.
"Yeah, you must be Javier," I replied.
"The one and only." He had a thick, and I mean a thick, South American accent.
"This your truck?"
I said, pointing to it. "Yeah. You like her?" "Oh yeah, I love her." but we're going to take my truck if you don't want it smashed up like a beer can. Might want to get it kitted similar to mine. I pointed to Stacy. Dents in the side, a broken headlight, and dried blood on the bumper spikes from the key loot made her look much more able for the job than Pretty Boy's truck. Fine, let's take the piece of shit. At this I got up and punched him in the gut. He got up and went for his gun, but I had mine off my hip first, and at the sound of the hammer being cocked back, for dramatic effect, he raised his hands. Don't make fun of another man's truck, Javier. He gave me a shit-eating grin and laughed. So did I. I helped him up and we got into Stacy and started her. So Javier, what do you want to see first? A rampant sex robot or a herd of Wendigo? He looked taken back. Robot please. I'm not too fond of Wendigo. Robot it is. After driving for a few minutes, I worked up the courage to ask Javier about his past. So what's your story, Javier? Well, I used to be a cartel leader for El Chapo. Then my partner betrayed me. She reported me to the police. She took our kids. She killed our son and sold our daughter into trafficking. I hunted her down. I posed as a Bolivian ambassador and got her into bed without her recognizing me. I chloroformed her, threw her out to the window and jumped out after her, put her in my cartel car and drove away. I chopped her head off a few minutes later in the middle of the desert and left her to rot. Did you ever find your daughter? Yeah, she was bought by a few FBI agents who had the goal of freeing as many trafficking victims as possible. They freed her back into my custody until they found out about my past. They took her away and imprisoned me. I broke out by strangling the guard on duty with my handcuffs. I shot and killed everyone in the compound, including my twin brother, who'd been in prison for cartel affiliation. I placed my ID in his pocket and ran. Holy shit, you're a badass, man. How did they not realize that the body wasn't you? The cartel requires members to burn off their fingers and toe prints so they can't be identified if imprisoned. So, your ex-partner, she was your girlfriend? No, amigo. She was my wife. I will never understand why she killed our son. I don't think I want to look into someone that insane. Holy shit, man. I'm sorry. Nah, it's fine. It doesn't bother me as much anymore. Enough about me. What is your backstory, compadre? I outlined to him the story of my past, which I told all in my previous post, along with some details that I left out in that post, which I would like to continue to leave out for now, as they involve my child. I may tell someday. Wow, so this Cryptid really does take in criminals like us, Javier said when I was finished. We arrived in the Sharpberg area a short while later. It wasn't hard to find the robot. She didn't go far from her previous residence. I pulled out my revolver, let bullets in it this time, and held it at the ready. Put your hands up, ma'am. She turned around. Why? I accidentally killed my owner. Everyone thinks I've done it on purpose. What reason do I have to live? Shoot me, sir. Please. We aren't going to shoot you, ma'am. Put your hands up. How this thing was sentient with feeling of regret I had no clue, but I was willing to bring her in or kill her, either one. Fine, she said, slowly raising her hands. I handcuffed her. Valerie of Sexter Corp, you're under arrest for the murder of Jonathan Rogers. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you by the state of Maryland. Do you have any questions? No. Good. I just arrested a sex robot. I called the police and left her chained to the front porch, and we left. Two criminals have no business in an arrest. We began driving to Winchester, talking about who we thought was going to win the 2020 elections. I thought Trump. Javier thought Warren. Guess we'll have to see who won that. We arrived at the location and met a park ranger who took us to the location of the disappearance. I knew exactly where the Wendigo lair was from the stench of rot coming from the cave. about 100 yards away from the disappearance site. I told the park ranger to wait wherever he was, which he gladly did, and Javier and I went in. The cave wasn't very deep. We got to the back of it. There were 4 Wendigo feasting on 7 bodies, all clearly campers. I had a full cylinder of gnat rounds, 6 shots. Javier had his magazine full of gnat rounds. His finger fondled the trigger of his Glock. The gun was clearly comfortable in his hands. I tried not to think about how people have died at the hands of this man. I was no clean slate, but he's killed at least 100 more people than I. That scared me. We opened fire on the Wendigo herd. My first bullet caught the alpha in the head, killing him instantly. Javier caught one in the genitals. It bellowed in pain. My second bullet caught another one in the chest, blowing a hole the size of a potato through it, killing it. Javier had a sadistic grin on his face while shooting to wound. He was enjoying their pain. This sick fuck was enjoying their pain. He had shot the same one 3 times now, in the lower body. I shot the third one after it started to run at us. It died immediately. I had hit it in the head as well. Javier was still shooting the same Wendigo, torturing it. I shot it in the head. Javier, why the fuck weren't you shooting to kill? These bastards deserve pain, and you know it, Kyle. Shoot to kill next time. Yes, sir. I called in Jerry. He sent the cleanup crew. I had $500 wired to my account. Javier had $450 wired to his. We went home. Javier got into his truck and drove home after a quick goodbye. And here I am, telling those of you who care for my experiences. Stay safe, kids. This is Carl Reitinger, signing off. Part 5. The finale. Okay, so a lot of shit has happened since the last update. So, first I should clarify that I'm not Kyle. I'm Javier Garcia. And right now there is an open investigation into Carl Reitinger's disappearance. I got here to find a story nearly finished on his laptop. I hid the laptop and called the cops because Carl was nowhere to be found with it in his house. There was blood on the floor trailing to the woods. His truck was still parked in the driveway. The cops arrived. I told them who was missing. They didn't fucking believe me at first. They didn't fucking believe me that my partner was missing. Well, that can't be possible. Kyle Reitinger is dead. Bullshit he is. I told them the story Carl told all of you in his 3rd post. The failed hit part, not the childhood. They actually believed me by some miracle and started an investigation. I used the identity of my other twin. Identical triplets. Juan was the only one that stayed out of the cartel. They questioned me about the last time I'd seen him. I told them. It was the night before, after our hunt. What do you mean, hunt? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Tell me, son, this is important if we're to find Kyle. We need to know who he could have pissed off, because right now it looks like a kidnapping. We were on a hunt for a Sasquatch and a fern wolf. Son, I need to tell you the truth here. Those are just old legends. I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Let me call my boss and put him on speaker. Okay. I took out my cell phone and tapped Jerry's number into my contacts. Good old Jerry, the jerk-off, answered on the first ring.
Jay, what is it? Where the fuck is Kyle? I've been trying to call him for the past 2 hours.
The detective answered for me.
Sir, Jay is sitting with me in the police station.
I am Detective Ventura of the Winchester Police Department.
Carl Reitinger went missing sometime last night, and we are currently trying to find him. I understand that you are Jay's boss.
There was silence for a second before.
Yes.
Good. Sir, Jay tells me he and Carl were hunting a Sasquatch and a fern wolf last night. Is that correct?
Yes,
Jerry said through obviously gritted teeth. After a few seconds, I hung up the phone. They questioned me for another half an hour, then let me go. I went home with Carl's laptop, and I'm now going to transcribe what he wrote. Beginning of transcription. Tonight we had 2 very difficult hunts. Since we last spoke, a wolf has bit the shit out of me. I got the usual call from Jerry around 6. Hello?
Kyle, there's a Sasquatch terrorizing hikers on the Appalachia Trail.
Fuck. God damn it.
There is also a fern wolf in the Martinsburg area.
Fuck. Okay, I'll get on it when Javier gets here. Javier arrived 10 minutes later. I chewed him out on the way to Martinsburg. We arrived at the location of the mauling 40 minutes later. I jumped out of my truck with Javier following close behind. I got my guns out of my truck and a 6-foot piece of bronze American wire. For those of you that don't know, a fern wolf is a wolf the size of a mastiff with a jaw that can unhinge and swallow a human whole. It has claws sharp as knives and nearly as large. It has the strength of Hercules on steroids. My AR was loaded with bronze bullets and my revolver was loaded with silver ones. It wasn't hard to track down the wolf. There was a trail of blood that led right to her. When we found her, I told Javier the plan. You get in front of her and shoot her in the legs. I'll come up from behind and wrap this around her. I held up the wires. Got it, said Javier in his thick South American accent. He ran to the front of the wolf and got her attention. He started shooting at her, hitting every shot in her legs. I ran up and wrapped the wolf in the bronze wire and she started to sizzle, screaming in pain. She was immobilized and in a lot of pain. I picked her up and threw her in the bed of my truck. Jerry likes to rehabilitate fern wolves and keeps them as pets. I called Jerry and he started over to my location. He arrived 10 minutes later in his 2020 Ford F-350 pickup truck. He took the wolf, wired $2,000 to my bank account. Fern wolves are worth a fuck ton of money, and drove off. We then went to the location of the Sasquatch. On the way there, we talked about women and such. He got the location of the Sasquatch sighting and got out the truck. The Sasquatch found us before we found him. He stepped out into the trail and faced us. We raised our guns and yelled. Put your hands up! He did. My name is Miguel. Please, if you're gonna do it, shoot me. I could hear his voice quiver. Get on your knees, please. He did. I walked up and chained his hands together. He was crying. Miguel, it's okay. I'm not gonna shoot you. Thank you, he said, crying. I only changed your hands because I don't think you will, but it's possible you could try and kill me. I won't. Good to know. Javier, call Jerry and ask him what to do if one surrenders. Javier made the call while I sat chatting with Miguel. Javier came back. Kyle, can I talk to you for a second? Yeah. I assured Miguel I'd be right back. We walked a short distance down the trail. What did he say? He told me to shoot him. What? I'm not letting you shoot him. Look at him. He hasn't done anything. We looked back and Miguel was playing with the beetle that had crawled onto his hand. He was watching and laughing while it crawled all over his hand. I agree. I don't want to shoot him. I say we let him go and tell Jerry that he ran and we couldn't get him. Sounds like a plan. I walked back to Miguel and unchanged him. Come on, man. Stand up. You're free to go. Really? Thank you so much. Every other hunter has tried to kill me. He started crying again. Hey, it's okay, Miguel. I need you to leave the area, though. Otherwise, they're going to send another hunter after you. I'll give you an hour's head start before I call my boss and say you ran off. They will send a search party out. They never go more than 5 miles from the escape point. Can you run 5 miles in an hour? He smiled. Yep. Okay, get a move on, Miguel. Maybe we will meet again someday. He stood up and wrapped me in a bear hug. Squatch hug? Can't breathe, Miguel. Oh, sorry, sir. It's okay. Your hour starts now. He smiled, turned, and ran off down the trail. I turned around and Javier was smiling, genuinely smiling. I've never seen it before. Do I get a hug like that, you big ugly teddy bear? Shut up, asshole, before I dress you up in a monkey suit, shoot you and turn you over to Jerry. We laughed, waited the hour and told Jerry that the Sasquatch got away. After some cussing, he accepted it and we went home. And here I am writing this. I just heard something walking outside the door to my room. It sounds big. It has claws. I'm going to check it out. If I don't come back and you find this, Javier, post this story and continue this post thread. End of transcription. So that's it. I'll update as details come up in Kyle's case. Update. The police found Kyle's revolver in the woods behind his house. Javier Garcia, you're under arrest for the kidnapping of Carl Reitinger.